Hi, I'm Edith Harbaugh, CEO and co-founder of LaunchDarkly. I've been making software my entire life, and the way it was when I started out was a style called waterfall software releases. And this was this idea that you could basically know everything about your software, plan it all out, and then release it, and then basically have a big party to celebrate because this was something you did every year or so. This was really very stressful, and no, this is not a picture of the rain last night. This is the picture of what it felt like when you had basically this waterfall release where you are pushing out a lot of stuff very quickly to your customers with no time to react. If they're unhappy and if stuff are broken, you're just stuck. So the reason why I had the other slide of waterfall software releases instead is that the smartest companies now don't release once every year. They release once every month, once every week, or even once every day. And this allows you to get a lot faster feedback from your customers because you can say, okay, here's this new feature. What do you think of it? Is it something you like? Should we tweak it? And you just have a lot more cycles if you are just releasing more. So instead of having it be a once-a-year thing, you're doing it all the time. However, this is really scary. You know, if you're saying, okay, I'm releasing all the time, what if something goes wrong? So there's a lot of things that you could do to reduce the risk when you're releasing more frequently, and I'm going to talk about some of those ways that you can reduce risk so that you're getting the right features to the right people at the right time, but not breaking everything. So really what you want to do is have a virtuous cycle. You don't want to have a waterfall where you're basically cascading down risky bugs. What you want to do is have a way for your product team, your development team, your QA, ops, sales, and marketing to all collaborate in software. So one thing you could do, so I'm going to talk a lot about techniques basically for Canary Launches, which is a way where you can basically map a feature to different users. So this is a classic technology chasm where you always have some people who are in your user base who are really happy about new features. I gave a talk a couple weeks ago with Microsoft, and they were describing some new features they had, and the people on the call got so excited because they wanted these new features immediately. So what they did is they had released these features, but they had turned them off for everybody, and then people could go and self-select to get the new features. So there's always people who are in your user base who are really excited to get something new, and then you have people who don't want anything new. And the really interesting thing is that feature by feature, these can actually be the same people. Some people might really want to try out a new autocomplete box, but really not want to update something else. So a really valuable technique is to basically let people map their own risk tolerance to what features they get. And the really surprising thing about this is that the people who are the innovators are actually the most patient sometimes with buggy software because they see it as them getting a chance to participate in a development cycle. The classic ones who don't want new stuff are, for example, if you're a payment processor like Stripe, people want that to be very stable. So something that you could do with your own software releases is to map out who gets what and not push everything out to everybody at the same time. Another thing you could do to iterate quicker is to run beta programs. Again, people like feeling like they're getting something special. So if you sell it not as here's some early code that might be buggy, but as here's your opportunity to get closer to the company that's making software, people get really, really, really into that. And you can run betas two ways. You can either run a beta where you're saying, I'm going to pre-populate everybody who gets to this beta from that, or you could just have an open beta on the web, like Google Labs does, where they allow people to opt in. A really valuable technique also when you're releasing faster is to block certain users. There's a lot of reasons why you might, for example, want to block TechCrunch from seeing your new feature before it's ready. You might want to block a competitor from seeing a new feature. You might have a cranky customer who says, I don't want to see new things, or you might have a time when you're testing a different feature and you want to block an entire org structure from seeing it. So when you're releasing a new feature, one way to release faster again is don't give it out to everybody, but carefully segment who gets it and think about why different people are getting it. Another thing you could do when you're putting out a new feature is that you really want to also segment out your new users from your power users. New users take different care. This is their first experience with your product. You don't want to overwhelm them with a lot of features. So if you have something new, you might want to say, okay, I'm testing onboarding and only new users get this, or this is a really advanced feature that a power user only will get, and then map those two together. Of course, what are you really doing all this for? You're doing this to deliver value to your customers. And so the title of the talk was how to release without breaking your customers or your employees. Employees, and I'm an engineer, everybody really wants to see their product out in the world. So the surprising thing is that if you're releasing more quickly, you start to have more fun at work. Like, so when I worked at these year-long projects, it was really frustrating because you'd go home at the end of the day and you wouldn't really feel like you made any progress. You're like, oh, I've done another little mini chunk, but nobody's going to see it for another year. By breaking stuff down into smaller and smaller chunks and releasing more frequently, what you're really doing is empowering your team. It's really fun to be able to go home at the end of the day and say, not only did I build something, but I actually released it. So that's a really good technique for empowering an entire team. This goes back to when you start to empower your team and they start to get more feedback from the field, your entire product suddenly becomes alive. It's not a dead thing where every 16 months you have to iterate through. Software is really a living organism where people are proud to participate in it. So the other part of it is that you also have to, so number one, make sure that the team is on board with releasing more quickly. The other thing is making sure your customers are okay with it. People have the notion that if you're releasing all the time, that everything is visible to all customers. Really what you're doing is you're releasing all the time, and then you're carefully choosing why a different customer gets different functionality. And the key there is to make sure that your customers are on board. And I talked through a lot of techniques, but I think that number one is just to map out your own customer base. For example, if you're a large bank, something that you're iterating very quickly might be a flow for people to sign up for credit cards, because that's something where it's very UI heavy. You can quickly iterate through it. However, the stuff that you don't want to iterate very quickly on is stuff more deep in the back end. For example, an ACH payment, you want to make sure that that is rock solid and not something that you're constantly iterating on. So the biggest mistake I've ever seen in software development is to think that you can build something once and be done. So I've been part of some colossal failures, and they're really risky. If you put something out there and it's broken, you get into this panic mode where you want to fix something immediately. And that's actually when you get more mistakes. So one of my biggest mistakes was we put out a bad software release once that we realized just was not going to work at all. And so we quickly shipped a fix pack to fix it. And then we shipped another fix pack, and we actually got up to fix pack H within about an hour and a half, because we're just trampling all over the prior thing. So what you really want to do when you're doing a release is think carefully about how to mitigate risk when you're building it, and build in safeguards around that so that you always have a way that you can roll back or really test different things with different customers. Thank you for your time today. I hope you learned something new about how you can make better releases.